there's a crazy sex scene between Lisa Bonet and Mickey Rourke, which initially got the movie an X rating. It was that crazy, where they're like, you gotta cut some of this out or else this won't be shown in theaters. Hello and welcome to today's edition of Frightfully Forgotten Horror Movies, but before we get started, what are we drinking?
We're drinking the Nostromo's Contraband Black IPA. Today we're going to bring to you 1987's Angel Heart, based on the 1978 novel called Falling Angel, directed by Alan Parker. He also did Pink Floyd's The Wall, Midnight Express, and Mississippi Burning.
Rest in peace, Gene Hackman.
Yeah.
So this movie stars a very young Mickey Rourke.
Yeah, before he got all carved up and everything.
All mutilated from boxing and then trying to fix his face from the boxing. And anyways, he's in his prime here. This is prime Mickey Rourke. It stars Robert De Niro, again a legend. We don't need to say one damn movie he was in. Lisa Bonet is in this, and she's probably best remembered from being on The Cosby Show.
Yeah.
And Bill Cosby was all like telling her that she shouldn't date Lenny Kravitz and saying whether or not she should be in this movie and all this shit. It's like, he's just her TV dad. Like, not a real dad.
Has all his control and power over her.
Angel Heart takes place in 1955 and starts off in New York, and we're introduced to kind of a lowbrow, low-rent PI, Harry Angel. He gets a phone call from a lawyer who's calling on the behalf of his client who wants to speak with Harry about a potential job. Goes to like this gospel church, and they're actually having a service when he kind of goes there, and they're praising the Lord and doing all their stuff, and he goes upstairs and walks by this room, and there's this woman cleaning up all this blood from the floor.
Yeah, and on the wall and everything.
So he sits down and meets this client. We find out his name is Louis Cypher?
Cypher.
He can't, he's always struggling to pronounce it. Played by Robert De Niro, and he's this mysterious guy with this cane and these long fingernails, these rings and shit. And Mr. Cypher wants to hire Harry to find an old client of his, Johnny Liebling, who's better known as Johnny Favorite, who used to be like a crooner back in the war days before he got drafted into the war. They had a contract that this Johnny Favorite broke, and Cypher basically wants to find him. Cypher tells Harry that he knows that Johnny Favorite was admitted to this mental hospital because he had shell shock after the war. The trouble is that he believes that he's no longer at the hospital and possibly someone is hiding the fact that he's no longer there. He goes to the hospital and kind of hits it off with the nurse.
Yeah,
he's flirting
quite
with
a
her.
bit.
He's looking at the records. Instantly he notices ballpoint pen was invented in the 50s. These records go back to the 40s. They've been falsified because they're written in ballpoint pen. And all the records are signed off by this doctor, Dr. Fowler. Harry tracks down Dr. Fowler, breaks into his house when he's not even home. It goes through his fridge, vials of morphine in there.
Morphine!
So he's an addict, right? He's just taking all the drugs home from work.
Nobody's gonna miss him, you know,
And he waits there for him to come home, and he does come home, and he sweats him out, basically, because he wants his morphine.
He's all grabbing him by the tie and everything.
And roughs him up a bit, and is able to squeeze some information off him. Johnny Favorite has been basically not at the hospital since the 40s, and he's been falsifying the records since the 40s because he was paid off by a man and a woman who came one day to take him away. Locks Fowler in his bedroom and makes him basically detox as he goes out for a burger. He goes back to check on Fowler to get more information off of him, and he goes into the bedroom and finds out that he's committed suicide. He shot himself in the head with a gun that he had in the bedroom. Harry meets up with Cypher to tell him what he's learned. And Cypher's eating this hard-boiled egg, crushing it and everything.
Would you like an egg? No. Gotta think about chickens.
Tells him what he's learned and that he wants out of this deal. But he offers him $5,000 to stay on the case, and back in 1955, that's a lot of money.
It's big bucks.
He finds out from his squeeze that he's about to get hot and heavy with here, done a lot of digging for him, that Johnny Favorite had a fiancée. And he also had a girlfriend on the side who is into voodoo and black magic and all this kind of stuff. So he goes to New Orleans to track these people down.
He goes to New Orleans to seek out a woman named Margaret Krusemark, Johnny Favorite's fiancée. And she's a fortune teller, and she's into all this mysticism, and she wants to know some details about Harry, and Harry ends up giving her Johnny Favorite's information.
His birthday and all that kind of stuff.
What it ends up doing is it just pisses her off because she realizes he's lying, and then he admits it. I'm not who I said I was. And she's like, get out! There was a woman who had an affair with Johnny, and her name was Proudfoot. He finds out that she's dead, and he actually goes to the grave to corroborate this. He actually sees the daughter, Epiphany. She's like washing her hair under that pump or whatever. And
that's where you washed your hair back then.
Yeah.
There's no fucking shower.
He's sort of hitting on her a little bit too, right? And he's like, well, you know, if you find anything out, give me a call. And give me a call even if you don't find anything out. And he tries walking away, and he's tripping underfoot under those chickens.
Like the chickens, like the bane of his existence are these chickens.
Gotta think about chickens. Epiphany also tells him about Johnny Favorite's guitar player, Toot Sweet. Finds out where this Toot Sweet is playing.
I want to drink in that bar.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. And he goes to the bathroom, and he sees a chicken's foot on the urinal. And right away, this bouncer guy grabs him and kind of picks him up and just literally throws him right out of the bar into all these garbage cans. Like into the street.
Cartoon style.
Yeah. Harry knows that something's up with this Toot Sweet, follows him, and it turns out that Toot Sweet is part of this, like, voodoo ritual that's going on, sacrificing a chicken.
And Epiphany is the one
she's the one who's all in a trance and everything with this chicken. Follows Toot Sweet back to his apartment, throwing Toot Sweet down to the ground. He's like, okay, if you know anything, give me a call. And he gives him his number.
Shoves it in his mouth?
Yeah.
It's not the only thing that gets shoved in his mouth that night.
So Harry ends up waking up in his room. There's two cops that are already inside rummaging through all his stuff. He heard that you were following this Toot Sweet last night. It turns out that somebody carved him up real good, cut off his appendage and shoved it down his throat.
Yeah. Poor Toot Sweet.
Yeah, I guess he talks a little too much. So Harry goes back to Krusemark's apartment to get more information. She's on the floor dead with her heart cut out. Meanwhile, there's also two henchmen that are after him because he's starting to dig up too much shit here that he shouldn't be. That dog, when he gets into those stables and the horse all bucks and
kicks that poor dog and everything.
Boots the dog.
Then Harry Angel gets bit by that dog too, and it's like, holy fuck, this poor guy is like, I don't know if it's worth the $5,000.
Yeah. So Harry seeks out Krusemark's dad. The dad is the one who hired the henchmen to beat the shit out of him and kind of silence him. Come into the hut, sample some of our gumbo.
This rich asshole, he's got all these horse races on his property and everything.
And a giant cauldron of gumbo. That's living. They go into this back room with all these huge ice cubes. He's all chipping away the ice. And he's chipping away the ice while this man starts telling him the backstory. He starts basically spilling the beans on everything. Johnny Favorite sold his soul to the devil for fame and fortune. Ended up transferring his soul to an unknown person.
To hide from the devil.
Yeah.
Because he broke the contract.
Yeah. Makes Harry sick, and he starts to feel sick, and he goes and starts puking in the toilet, and he has this spell. And when he comes to, he leaves the hut and he sees this guy all boiling up in the gumbo. He like pulls him up and he sees his face all boiled up.
All the gumbo pouring out of his eye sockets and everything. It's pretty crazy. It's a good effect, man.
He just puts him back into the gumbo. And that's where we're gonna leave it. So if you want to find out what happens next with Harry and the crazy adventures that he's on, keep watching 1987's Angel Heart. That gumbo looked pretty damn good, but man, I wouldn't want to drown in it.
Look at you. You stayed up all night drinking, watching the Hammer Horror Marathon when you knew we had a production meeting this morning. You've seen all those movies before. Look, I slaved all day over this giant cauldron making this gumbo, and you can't even enjoy it.
I think that,
Why should you watch 1987's Angel Heart?
Oh,
There's many reasons, many reasons to watch it.
fantastic film.
Yeah.
Convoluted, but fantastic.
The first thing that really grips you in about this movie is the atmosphere and the tone that it sets right off the bat. It's like the first 10 seconds. You get this really seedy picture of New York, this back alley. You see this guy dead on the ground with his throat slit. And really, I don't think it has much to do with the story, but it definitely helps setting the tone.
It's not your Leave It to Beaver 1950s. This
Yeah.
is a gritty, dirty, seedy 1950s, probably closer to what most people actually lived
Yeah.
during the 50s, especially in New York, New Orleans, like where the movie takes place.
That's right. Even though it takes place in the 50s, a lot of the things in the movie look like they're a little older, right? Like the cars they drive look like they're more from the 40s. And it's kind of a little more realistic because...
That bleeds over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, you know, people don't buy new cars every year.
Even though it does take place in the 50s, a lot of things are still very relatable.
Mm-hmm.
The 50s were a long fucking time ago. People drive cars, telephones, fashion's kind of almost the same. You know,
Sort
like,
of. It's definitely similar to the 80s,
yeah,
that's
like,
for sure.
like not much has really changed. Like a lot has changed, but also not much has changed.
That's right, yeah. It's just far back enough to make it relatable, right?
Yeah. So the hallmark of this movie really is the story. And it is a convoluted one. The way that the things play out and the way that Harry finds out all this information, and he just keeps getting deeper and deeper into this world that he wanted no part of.
That's right, yeah. He told Louis Cypher, you know, it's like, he's all swearing at him too. He's like, I don't want no fucking part of this shit.
And it's quite a crazy story, and it just gets crazier as he gets deeper into things, you know? It starts off in New York and ends up in New Orleans with all this crazy voodoo stuff. Like, it's quite the trip he goes on.
It starts off in New York with sort of a Christian spin on things, right?
Yeah.
With the church and all that. You see all the imagery that has to do with that. And then when it goes to New Orleans, it takes on the religion of the region, right? Which is,
voodoo,
voodoo. And then you get immersed into that, which is cool.
And it's neat how it starts off in New York, where it's cold. He's always wearing a coat.
Yeah.
Then he goes to New Orleans, where it's hot and it's sweaty. He's not wearing the coat anymore, and he's always sweaty and greasy. And he's getting closer to the truth, but he's also getting closer to hell. Things are getting more hellish and horrible for him. And hell is hot, baby. He gets to the gumbo where it's hot. He doesn't want to partake in anything that's any hotter, right? He's literally stepping into hell.
Yeah.
And I like the way they use the going to New Orleans where it's hotter. Everything's hotter. The temperature, the food. Everything's hotter.
It's gonna get hotter. His clothes too. It's like
they get all sweaty.
Yeah, and his pants are all shredded up after.
Yeah.
Like, man, he gets put through the fucking ringer in this movie.
Yeah, he takes a physical and mental toll. You know.
Yeah, and Harry is just one character out of many that are extremely colorful in this movie. Everyone in this movie is very memorable. They all leave their mark. They all have a very important part to play in the story, all the way down to the man in the gumbo, basically.
Yeah,
you know?
like there's no throwaway characters.
No,
at all.
not at all.
Even the minor characters, like when he goes to Coney Island to do some digging about the voodoo woman, and he goes onto the beach, and there's that weird guy sitting there in the cold, with the sunglasses and the nose guard. And his wife is like working out her varicose veins in the water. Like, it's these weird people. Everyone's weird and memorable. The imagery is a big part to play in this movie. You know that you're looking at something that you have to analyze. Yeah. What does that mean? What do these things mean that they keep showing you, right? Like, He's always having the visions of the woman in the black.
Yep.
Sitting at the church.
He gets closer to her, right?
Yeah.
But he can't quite touch her.
Yeah.
It's
Like his dreams mean something. What does that mean, you know? You always see the fan turning.
yeah.
What does the fan mean? And then you watch the movie a couple of times and you notice like, oh, like whenever they show the fan turning and it starts to kind of
Stop.
then someone dies.
Yeah.
Like that means someone is going to die.
All of these things to do with the church, right?
Even the first time he goes to a church, there's a woman there cleaning up blood.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what does that mean something?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
not there for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
Blood is spilled in the church.
Yeah, yeah.
People die for their religion, you know. Religion spills blood.
That's right. And they do a good job, I noticed too, on distracting you. Every time there's clues that are released in the movie, somehow through the characters, there's a lot going on. For example, when Harry, his squeeze that works at the newspaper, when she finds out all that shit about Johnny Favorite, when she's telling him all that information, they're fooling around.
Right.
Like he's all undressing her, and
Right.
there's all this stuff that's distracting the viewer.
Yeah.
And so you have to pay attention. It's not just two people sitting staring at each other. This
Yeah.
is normal. It feels like normal real life,
Yeah.
right? Playing out.
This movie, as surreal as it is still very realistic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a crazy sex scene between Lisa Bonet and Mickey Rourke,
Yeah.
which initially got the movie an X rating. It was
Yeah.
that crazy, where they're like, you got to cut some of this out, or else this won't be shown in theaters, basically.
Yeah.
And they had to cut out a lot of specific things, like thrusting, like specific thrusting things. But it's a crazy scene. Like, there's all this blood coming down from the ceiling.
Yeah, and they're all painted in it and moving around, and
Again, very surreal, very dreamy. Like, you know that's not really happening. There's not really blood falling on them as they're having sex. But it means something.
Yeah.
What does this mean? You know, it's all this very surrealistic, artsy stuff, which it works so well for the movie.
Yeah.
It takes you into that voodoo world of like, something is wrong,
mysticism. and
something's
everything.
amiss, you know?
Yeah, and then there's all those flashback things too. It sort of trips you up almost while you're watching it, you know. It's-
what's that?
Yeah, like what's going on? Holy shit.
But then you're trying to analyze that, but the movie keeps going. You're like, oh.
Yeah. It goes back to that thing I was talking about with the distractions. There's
Yeah.
a lot of distractions.
Like the symbolism too, like the chickens.
Yeah.
He's always saying, I don't like chickens.
Yeah, from the very beginning.
And the chickens do, I think, play a part there. Like, what do the chickens mean? The chickens mean something. He doesn't like chickens. He's always stepping over the chickens. But you see chickens being sacrificed in the voodoo rituals.
Yeah. And Cypher's eating that egg.
Yeah.
And it means something to do with the soul.
Right, so it's like, yeah, the chickens.
Yeah.
Is he the chicken? Is that why he doesn't like chickens? And the settings in this movie, again, we already talked about the New York setting, the New Orleans setting, just awesome.
Yeah. And each set
Yeah.
that he's on, like everywhere he goes, is a little character unto itself.
Right, yeah. All of them. They're
Yeah.
all little characters, and it sucks you right in. Like, you really feel like you're there with these people. Like, you can almost smell them.
Yeah, how
Like-
they're sweating.
Like, when Mickey Rourke takes off his coat in that one shot, and you can see all the sweat stains. It's like, you can smell the fucker.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. The music, too, is really good in this movie, and it kind of relates to wherever Harry's at. You know, like, the music is different in New York than it is in New Orleans. You get immersed into
Yeah.
where he's at from the music as well.
And the soundtrack, too, like, the score for this movie is not so much a score. It's interesting because it's more a soundscape.
Yeah,
It's like heartbeats. Boom, boom, boom. It's not really music, you know? It's these weird sounds and stuff that really make you feel that surrealistic, makes you feel like something wrong is going on,
yeah.
right? Something unnatural is happening because the soundscape is unnatural,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and it puts you off, you
Yeah.
know, as the viewer. The acting is fucking good in this too. Yeah, like you'd mentioned in the beginning, this is Mickey Rourke at his best, you know. Robert De Niro does a great job of being very unsettling. He's an
Yeah.
unsettling creep in this.
He's unsettling because he's so calm. The foreshadowing in this movie is fantastic. Like, you have to watch the movie more than once to get a lot of that. But, like, once you've seen it once, you watch it again, you're like, okay. Well, so much foreshadowing. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's a circle. The themes in this movie are great too, and they're like, tried and tested. They always work in movies, but they're done in a slightly different way. Like the whole theme of selling your soul to the devil.
Don't fuck with the devil!
Sold your soul.
Sold your soul?
Especially musicians, right? Johnny Favorite's a musician who sold his soul to the devil. Very much so like, the old
Crossroads.
The Crossroads, sell your soul at the Crossroads, the legend that Robert Johnson did that. And,
Yeah.
But it does it in a slightly different way where you see what happens after.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Harry's trying to fill in the middle.
Yeah. What happens to these people after they sell their soul, but they don't fill their end of the bargain?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what this movie is all about. I've only sold my soul once, and it was simply just for a really good VHS haul.
Didn't you break that contract?
What are you doing here? Where's all my horror VHS tapes?
You've been living on borrowed movies and another man's tapes for years, Adam.
No. Those are my tapes.
Were your tapes. And I know the boy who took them. Guided by my own hand, of course. He's gonna sell them back to me for $1 apiece.
Who's the boy?
Don't worry. No one will mourn your VHS tapes. Everyone is streaming nowadays.
Who's the boy?
You're not a real VHS collector.
I know who I am!
What gives VHS its worth, anyways? Because you love it?
I know who I am!
Streaming is weak. Only physical media is immortal. And your tapes are mine.
I know who I am! Ah!
You really thought I was the devil, eh?
Well, your eyes are glowing. You had some sick fucking wig on. I don't know.
So that's it. So if you want a tense mystery thriller investigation kind of movie that has these supernatural aspects that have to do with the church and voodoo mysticism, selling your soul,
Sold your soul?
It's almost like a noir movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a noir movie, but with voodoo involved and stuff,
Yeah.
So, noir voodoo movie.
Check out 1987's Angel Heart.
You won't be disappointed.
Yeah, that's right.
That ending was gonna kick your ass. Just like selling my soul to the devil kicked my ass. I mean, selling my soul to Justin.
Till next time, keep drinking.